Hello, welcome back to Metalsmithing. I'm Miss Simonson, and we are going to do part 2 of the earrings. So before we get started, I realized as I uploaded the other one that I never covered the basic style of hoops. So we're going to do this one really quick, and it is a really quick project. So we won't spend too much time on this, and then I will go over a couple other variations, and I will show you how to add beads in various ways. And I'll show you some examples of earrings using techniques that we've already covered in class so that you can get even more bang for your buck. So, to start, we're going to do this little hoop here. So I'm going to use, I've already cut a piece of wire. I'm going to use my little mandrel here. And before I actually do that, I'm going to flush cut that. I'm going to make a loop. I'm going to center the loop like I've done before. So I'm going to hold inside and outside at the bottom of that loop, and I'm just going to rotate my right hand back a little bit to center that on the wire. So I'm going to use my paint bottle here, and I'm going to put that loop flat across the bottle there. I'm going to hold that and use my fingers to work the wire around the bottle to the other side where it barely made it. All right, so I've got my shape. It opened up a little bit as I took it off the bottle, and that's fine, but that's also one of the reasons I hold it on there nice and tight. All right, so I need to create the little bend here that secures the ear wire. It's not flush cut, so I'm going to take care of that. And I'm going to use the back of my chain nose pliers just because that's about the correct length. And I'm going to go middle. So you don't want to go too big here or too long, because then to open and close the earring, you have to really kind of distort it. So you don't need much, maybe 1/4 of an inch there. Okay, so at this point, I want to work hard in this. So I've got the little catch inside the loop, and I'm going to hold on to that little piece of wire there, and the loop is not on the block. When I hammer this, and this is with my rawhide, I'm going to flip it over to the other side, and now it is work hardened. So you want that to be just inside that loop and to be fairly easy to come outside there. If this was too long, you'd really have to open it up to put that earring on. So that's one of the reasons to keep that little bit kind of short. If you wanted to texture this with your chasing hammer, you absolutely could. So it's just a personal call. You could hang a spiral off of here. You could hang a bead from there. You know, the options are endless. And when you have just a single hoop like this that you can open up, if you have extra things to hang off of it, it makes for a very versatile pair of earrings. So there is your basic hoop. All right, so we got that. So one other style that I'd like to point out is kind of a teardrop shape. So to do this here, I would cut 2 pieces of wire, fairly long. Kind of depends on what you're going to use for a mandrel. I'm going to make a loop in both ends. And I want, this one is facing away from me, so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And if they don't face away when you're done using your mandrel, not a big deal. That's why you have tools. So I've got my 2 loops. I'm going to attempt to put this in the center and just work these 2 ends towards each other. And I can see now that this one is a little wonky, so I'm just going to use my chain nose pliers to flatten that out. Ideally, if you're making earrings, of course, you should work both wires at the same time. So I would work this one, then I would take my other one and do the same thing. So right now there's still kind of a bit of a gap here, and that's okay. So a couple different ways I can do this. I can kind of work these two ends towards each other, similar to a jump ring, until they line up with each other, like so. And then I could put a jump ring in there. Or an ear wire. Let me do that. Pretend this is brass. So I opened the loop on that jump wire, or the ear wire. I added both loops onto there. I'll close the ear wire. Okay, and now you have a teardrop shape. So I would definitely recommend work hardening this area. And using a heavier gauge other than 20 is definitely recommended for something like this. So that's just what I actually have sitting right here in front of me. All right. So we've covered the basics, the ear wires, how to make a simple loop. So let's add some beads, shall we? All right. So in an attempt to make this not forever video, I'm going to kind of move sort of fast, so I apologize, but you can always rewind, slow it down, because I talk fast. So to start with the most basic, so this is a jump ring that I made on a marker. I could simply add a bead to this, or several, close it, and add it to an ear wire. And there's a pair of earrings right there, okay? It's literally, there's so many options. So there's one. So if I wanted to add beads to a hoop that have a wrapped loop at the top, I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, I'm not going to show you how to add the spirals here, because literally all I did was create a spiral and I rotated the loop at the top so that when the earring would be worn, the ear wire would be going back this way, so the spirals would be facing outwards. So to do such nonsense, I'm going to cut myself a piece of wire. And the main thing to know about when you're going to add beads to a curved wire is that the hole needs to be big enough to allow for that curve of the wire to go all the way through it. So you will need something with slightly larger holes than normal, I should say. So, got myself an wire. I'm going to start my shape. And, okay, this will be for the top. Just straighten that out so there's no kinks or anything in there. I'm going to hold that against my paint bottle so that that wire is sticking straight up. I'm going to wrap around said bottle to the other side. And I have some extra wire here, and I'm going to show you what we can do with that. So from here, I'm not going to wrap this around quite yet. First, I want to try to hold the shape as tight as possible while I take it off. So I'm pinching both wires where they cross. I'm going to bring in my rawhide. And hammer that to really help lock in that shape. Okay, so when I let go, it stays where it should. So here's where I will add my beads before I wrap the loop. And this one here is a little bit big, so I'm just going to have to open that up a hair for that to slide on. Okay, so we've got our beads on there. Now is when we'll wrap that loop at the top. Nothing new here. Nothing new to see. However, there is something new. Because I've got a little bit of extra wire here. So this happens. I'm going to try to salvage it. I just push that down. I'll pinch this here, straighten that wire. Okay. I will call this salvaged. Because once I make my loop up here, I'll be able to fix that little bit of wiggle. So in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to bring this over to the side. I'm going to make a loop. Not my best work. It's okay. It's Friday. The Friday before Thanksgiving. I think we're all kind of in the same boat. All right. So I salvaged that. Yay. So now, with this extra little bit of wire, I'm going to make a spiral that will kind of just sit right in the center in front of that wrapped loop. So I can only go so far with my round nose pliers before I have to pick up my chain nose to finish working that over. I'm going to push that down. Hey, it's like I never messed it up. Ish. Cool. All right, so there's that. So let's continue. So this here to me makes me think of like a Christmas ornament. And if I continued around going back and forth, sooner or later this is going to kind of straighten out. So you can start at the top and work with that curve. You can start in the center and just do a couple of rows. It's really up to you. Kind of depends on the accent sort of color, whatever you're going for. So to do such a thing, I'm going to start with a hoop that's already made. Excuse me. And I have some wire here. So this is 24 gauge. This is, I believe, 18 or 20 gauge copper. So I want to attach this thinner wire to this core. And I don't need to go around a whole bunch of times. I'm just going to go like twice. And I want to kind of pinch those wraps together so that there's not a whole lot of space between all of that. And this is where I can start to add some beads. And I had meant to bring over something really cool and unique, but I forgot. Well, I didn't forget, actually. I made a whole other video, so I thought, and then turned out it wasn't recording. So, yeah. So I'm just going to add some beads to said wire. And if you want to add something extra in the center, you know, you just kind of got to stop and look at it to see where you're at. So if, like for this one here, I've added this spiral in the center, I would probably go back to maybe there and put that on. Or maybe you add like a larger accent bead. Sky's the limit. But I'm going to go ahead and just do a straight line of beads all the way across and show you how I finish this. Okay. So I added one extra bead, so I'm going to take that off just so that I know that the beads go all the way across. I'm going to hold all this together so I don't distort my frame. I'm just going to wrap this thin wire around the frame a couple of times. And if I want to add another row of beads, I'd probably do it about here or here. You just want to have a little bit of space between that wire there and this row of beads. And if the beads you're going to add here are bigger, then you need to come further down the frame. Otherwise, it's going to distort and stick out. So rather than continue like I did here, and you can also see, hopefully, that with this frame here, I hammered that with the chasing hammer to give it some texture, and it adds just a little bit of sparkle. This one, I did not. So to end this, when you have something like this that wraps around a frame or something like that, anytime that you can finish off this wire on the inside of a design, that is the preferred way to do it. So I cut that on the inside, and I'm just going to pinch that up against the frame. And this one here, I'm going to go around the frame a couple more times to try to match that side. That's why it's always nice to have a little bit of extra wire when you start, because you never know if that might come in handy. Okay, so I made it all the way to the front, or the inside, I should say. I'll trim that off. And pinch that end down. And you've seen it kind of sliding around. So what I can do to kind of lock that in place is pinch this where these wires are on top of this wire. And that kind of helps lock everything in place. You might be able to see that it flattened just a little bit. And that kind of helps hold it where it should be, where you want it. See? And now it's not moving. So, there's that. So now I'm going to show you some designs that use previous lessons in designs that you can be used for earrings. So our last lesson was on herringbone. So with one of the designs I worked up, I added that to an ear wire here. So if I wanted to finish this pair off, I'd probably add a bead or a spiral drop of some sort there, just to kind of complete that picture. I'm not a big fan of leaving a loop like that with nothing on it. So this is one of the caged beads that I did on a brass ear wire. And then I just added a spiral at the bottom to kind of complete the picture. But that's a nice looking pair. Okay. Again, this is another herringbone design where it's all one wire. And I just added the accent beads and wrapping along with a spiral. This wire is actually a little too thick, though. Speaking of thick wire, this was made by one of my students last year, and I really like the way it looks. They hammered a loop here, they added a bead, they hammered here, added another bead, and then made an ear wire with the rest of the wire. It's a really nice looking design. Again, this would be a little bit too thick for a standard piercing, but if you know somebody with gauges or something like that, they could probably wear that. But it's just a nice, solid, one-piece design. So we all remember the little bead people that we made. You could add an ear wire up here to these guys. And honestly, I did make several of these as earrings. And they look fantastic. They're super fun. So there you have it, you guys. Like a ton of different options regarding beads and wire to make earrings for you or your loved ones. I mean, who wouldn't want some new earrings, right? They're the perfect quick accessory. Yeah. So please let me know if you have questions. Thank you for being here. I'll put those in the right spot. And I will see you later.